the work she does speaks for herself. We also have on as a panelist, Chioma Ude, founder African International Film Festival. Our moderator this afternoon is Joanna Chikezie, and it is my pleasure to turn the microphone to her to lead us in the conversation. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I do hope you would find the conversation worth your time. Joanna. Is Joanna there?
She's back.
Is Joanna there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, great. Apologies. This is the perfect time my internet decided to cut out. So can everyone hear me well now and see me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you. Oh, yes, I can see you now.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Frank, for the introduction and the open address. And it's my honor to be here today moderating a panel of amazing titans in the creative industries. I'm super excited because for once we have a really nice representation of the creative sector. We have fashion, we have art, we have film, we have music. And so I'm really sure this is going to be an amazing opportunity to unpack this very, very big topic when it comes to the impact, innovation, and the planning crisis. Whether it was COVID, it's really clear that the challenges and the opportunities facing the creative industries have been exaggerated. And today is all about really trying to unpack what's happening in our collective sectors and our businesses as well. For all of those of you who are logged on, feel free to jump on the Q&A and ask a question relating to any of the things, the points that the panelists have said. I won't go over the speakers again because Mr. Frank did a really nice job of introducing everybody. So I'm also happy to see people logging on, and there's been a lot of talk and there's so much happening as we speak about COVID-19. Some of us are like COVID-19 fatigue right now, but it's really great that everybody is taking some time out of their schedules and their lives to be on this call. It's a really important issue, and I think that the creative industries will be impacted in a really big way. And so we really can't stop talking about it, and we really can't stop highlighting the challenges and the opportunities that we see, especially for us as Africans. We're also adjusting to the new normal. I know I've adjusted to the normal. Some will argue that we're currently in COVID-19. For the fact that I am co-teaching children via Zoom every day, I think that, yes, we are definitely in the post-COVID era. However, there also is the argument that so far as we haven't found a cure and we haven't really found a vaccine and really don't understand how this virus works, we haven't got to post-COVID-19 yet. So I'm hoping that this discussion will help everybody on the call, whether you are in the creative industries or you're just interested in it, to really understand what's going on. And I'm going to just jump now into the questions. My first question is for Mr. Patrick Lee. Hope you can hear me very well. So Keene recently published guidelines in health and safety measures that cinemas will be taking the moment cinemas are able to open up again. Given the nature of the virus and the fact that a number of studios have postponed movie releases till next year, can you share more on how cinemas are planning for business post-COVID?
Okay, in the first place, COVID has really hit our industry significantly. It's been something that none of us have expected, planned for. And at the beginning of the year, you couldn't have said that this would be the situation we would find ourselves in. But nevertheless, we do. And for now, we'd like to sympathize with anyone who has had the misfortune to be sick, or for those who may have died. And also to congratulate, or at least encourage, the federal government, the state governments, and private industry in their efforts to try and bring this under control. In the cinema business, we were one of the first to voluntarily close our doors. We didn't wait for government to tell us, look, close down. No, we voluntarily closed our doors. And since then, we've been working with state governments and federal government to find a safe and acceptable way in which we can open our businesses up again. In our industry, we have over 20,000 people who are directly involved in the business that we do, both in exhibition and in distribution. And we impact almost 2 million people when it comes to, when you look at the wider Nollywood and the creative industry itself. So we are a big business in itself, the business that we do. For us, we're concerned about safety first and foremost. And it's very important to us to ensure that we get the message out to our customers out there that, look, when we reopen, we will ensure that we take your safety paramount. And there are those who have said to me, but how can you ensure 50 people come to the cinema, you make money? For those who understand our business, they will know that we do not need 100% occupancy to be able to make money. Most cinemas tend to operate on less than 50% occupancy. In fact, only about 4 cinemas around the whole country actually operate on over 50% occupancy. So in terms of ensuring that the amount of people who come through our doors is regulated, controlled, we can do that. We are also planning to ensure that all the safety protocols as prescribed by government are also put into effect. We will have the hand washing, we will do the face masks. For those of us who have the business environment that allows it, we'll have different entrances and exits. All of those things we are doing to ensure that our customers are safe. We also have ticketing systems that allow for you to pre-book your tickets. So you can choose your seat, and we can ensure that the 2-meter difference distance between seating customers is done. We can also book families to block book a particular seating. So all of those things we can do. And we're trying to ensure that we do all those things. Now, going forward, for the cinema business itself, we're also working on trying to see that some of the infrastructure that we use within the business itself is made in Nigeria. Unfortunately, quite a lot of the infrastructure we use is currently being sourced from abroad. Now, so we're looking at areas that we can actually start making these items in Nigeria. So things like our seats, can we make them here? The carpets, can we get proper fire-resistant carpets here? Can we provide good soundproofing that's adequate here? Can we even build some of our speakers here? We may not be able to build the more elaborate technological items that we use, like the projectors or the sound processors, but can we build the speakers here? So these are areas that we are currently looking at to ensure that we become more self-sufficient in our product, which will help us survive post-COVID-19. So these things are very important to us. Now, you also asked the question, okay, how do we survive COVID-19 when we open? Because if we take, for example, some major studios have said, at least one major studio has said they might consider releasing on streaming platforms along with cinemas. Okay, we said fair enough. But they've only decided on 2 movies to start with that are going to do that. The rest of the movies slated for September and onwards, no dates have been set to say, look, we're going to have it movie on demand. But there's also the question with regards to movie on demand. Is it going to be successful? Trolls was released, it was successful, but it came out at a time when there was a lockdown. So during the lockdown, nobody else has something else. There's very little product. Most of the producers aren't actually producing anything new to start with. Competition is low. So it was released, they made a lot of money. But if that is to happen, and if other studios decide that they want to go movie on demand, then we get the competition that comes in. So Universal were fine. They didn't have any competition when they released. But what if Warner Brothers, what if Sony Pictures or anyone else decides to release movie on demand? There'll be competition. Secondly, Nollywood might decide to do the same. And if Nollywood does the same and we have big movies that we can successfully stream, that's also competition. So we don't know yet whether the streaming avenue is a profitable business for studios. If you also look at the fact that around the world, we have 195,000 screens around the world. Out of this, there's about 6 billion seats available. Now, studios are going to take that information into account. So if I want to stream, and I've already got 6 billion in form of cinema attendance, will I get the same if I stream? Will I lose some customers if I stream on both sides? Will I get the same amount of revenue if I decide to stream? So there's so many questions that have not yet been answered. So for us in the cinema business, we believe that we still have the platform that is most profitable for studios when they release their movies. And it might take a few years. It's possible that with the development of streaming customers, that both might be able to survive side by side. However, for now, I think it's very difficult for any studio to say, look, I'm going to boycott the cinemas and I'm going to go straight into movie on demand. I don't see that happening. So for me, the cinema business is still going to be successful for now. In fact, my view, for the next 10 years, I don't see there being an alternative that is going to replace cinemas within that period of time. I'd be interested to see what others think about it, but for us in the cinema business, we believe that we still have a platform that's going to be very relevant for movies. Now, there's also the issue of, okay, movies that are released, not all of them are big budget movies. Some are small budget movies. What happens to those ones? Currently, they still make quite a lot of money on our own circuits. Will they go direct to movie on demand? I don't know. But I do know that the big studios and their big tentpole movies will still remain with us for now. While the smaller studios and the smaller movies that are coming out will have to decide what's best for them in terms of their cost base, whether they should go straight to movie on demand or still come to the cinemas. For Nollywood movies, I believe the big Nollywood tentpole movies will still go to the cinema, not straight to demand, movie on demand. And when in fact, when COVID-19 came on, if you look at the figures in terms of movies in Nigeria, out of the top 5 movies in January and February, 3 of them were Nigerian movies. In January, we had Sugar Rush, we had Merry Men, we had Your Excellency as within the top 5. By February, we had Sugar Rush, Dear Afi, and Small Chops. So there is a great market for Nollywood movies in the cinema circuit. And it's that market that we believe will be able to see us through this COVID-19, post-COVID-19. So I'm very confident that we'll be able to survive as a business post-COVID-19. Whether or not we are able to sustain the levels of attendance that we had in the past, we will see. But I'm still confident that we can, because Nigeria is a growing customer base. Unlike if you compare it with, say, Europe, or you compare it with China, or you compare it with America, their customer base has already been developed over the past 60 years. The attendance level in the United States is well over 1 billion in terms of attendance. Now here, we're barely scratching the surface with 1 million attendance in a year, or 2 million attendance in a year. So we were developing that customer base. And I still believe that we will continue to develop that customer base. So the market is still here. If America loses 20% of its market tomorrow, it may not feel it because of the level to which it has gotten to. For us, we don't expect to lose 20% because we're still developing the market. So I think that an answer to that question will be, I'm fairly confident that the cinema business will survive. The format might change a little bit, but it'll survive.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your confidence. I think you've raised a number of really interesting points. And I think that also leads me to my next question, especially as we're talking about streaming and digital adoption. I mean, if we look at, for example, Amazon, Amazon have been trying to generate digital adoption for their platform for the last 2 years, but in the last 2 months, we've seen what normally would have taken 2 years happen in just 2 months. So the way there's a massive resilience on e-commerce and deliveries. And so I think the issue for cinemas and the fact that you're saying that you're not going to see a massive change, I think also goes down to consumer behavior and changing patterns and the way we are now becoming very, very much reliant on digital platforms and streaming, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Amazon Prime or everywhere in the world. That has now kind of forced and propelled consumers to basically see the difference in, well, why would I, go to the cinema and risk my health when I can just watch it for a fraction of the price? So I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add, or anyone else has an opinion on this particular aspect, because I think a lot of it is to do with consumer behaviors and consumer patterns, which we're seeing have been accelerated just in the past 5 or 6 weeks.
Can I just
can I?
Right, Obi, go ahead. I'll add to. Okay, can I add to that? The assumptions are there that it's a fraction of the price. I don't think so. In terms of pricing in the Nigerian market, we have 2 prices basically, one for Lagos, one for outside Lagos. And the pricing outside Lagos is very, very competitive with anything else. So in terms of pricing, I still think that the cinema is reasonably priced. It's a fallacy to continue to use Lagos pricing as the pricing generally for cinemas. If you take Lagos pricing, for example, Lagos pricing on average to watch a movie is well close to 2,000 naira for a really big one. But the average pricing around the country is actually 1,100 naira. So despite the fact that Lagos charges as much as 2,500 to 3,000 for some movies, the average price in the country is 1,100. Now, most of the cinemas that are beginning to develop are actually developing outside Lagos. Lagos is still attracting quite a number of cinemas, but we're beginning to get cinemas in places like Enugu, in places like Owerri, in Ibadan, in Benin, in Port Harcourt, in Abuja, and in Kano, in Jos. Now, these are cinemas that are developing outside Lagos, and we shouldn't just assume that because Lagos pricing and Lagos has most of the cinemas, therefore, this is what obtains around the rest of the country. I don't agree with that. So we're still competitive in terms of pricing. Now, in terms of streaming, for example, if you take streaming, you have to look at it from the Nigerian context, which is what I tend to want to do. I see a lot of comparison with what goes on in the United States, what goes on in China, what goes on in America, in Europe, but Nigeria hasn't developed that level of infrastructure that obtains in those countries, and that level of customer base that also obtains in those countries in terms of the streaming customer base or even the cinema customer base. So right now, what we have is a country that is going through a period of development, both in terms of streaming customer base and in terms of cinema customer base, and also in terms of developing brands. So when you look at it from that perspective, and you say Nigeria is still a developing country, what do we want to do? We want to go straight, cut out the cinema and go straight to streaming. It doesn't always work like that. Also, what is the available revenue from a household point of view that is going to be spent on watching movies or watching streaming? Remember, if I'm going to watch a movie in the cinema, I have maybe a choice of 10 movies to watch. And each one of them is almost the same length of time, might provide me with some entertainment, but I might decide to go watch a Marvel movie because there's a level of excitement in that particular type of movie compared to a drama movie. But when I'm online, I have those choices, but I also have other choices because when I'm online, I have music, I have film, I have education, I have so many other things that attract my money. They want my money as well. So I'm not just saying I want to go online to go watch a particular movie, but when I go online, the options are so many. And it's that area that we haven't actually looked at properly when we say online is a successful business and it's going to make a lot of money. That's not always necessarily the case because the customer has even greater choice when going online compared to when they decide, oh, let's take the kids and go watch a movie in the cinema. When the kids are at home, I have kids at home, and they're forever arguing over whether or not they want to watch a cartoon movie, or the older one wants to watch a proper movie, or another one wants to watch a music video, or the other child wants to do something educational. So they're forever, because they know the choice is there. But if I say to all of them, let's go to the cinema, they're all in one voice. Great, we're going to watch Trolls, or we're going to watch Mulan, or any of the big movies that's coming out. And it's a day out for the family. So I still think there's a lot around there that people need to look at from a Nigerian perspective before we start to say that there's so much competition for streaming and it'll be the way to go in the future.
Okay.
Can I say something to this?
I'd like to say something to this too. Obi, after
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yvonne, can I say something to this?
You just make a point and then we can move on to Igoma. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay. First of all, I just wanted to agree with a lot of what Patrick was saying in the sense that, post COVID-19, and none of us really know how long that's going to be in terms of public health and everybody coming back to normal behavior. That's probably going to be 18 months to 2 years, right? Because even if science performs miracles and finds the vaccine, and then everybody feels safe, right, to re-engage. But what I think the most important thing that I think Patrick said, and I think that's the point, and it's the same thing for cinema, it's the same thing for live entertainment, it's the same thing for live sports. People and humans we thrive on human contact and experience and engagement. So if you've noticed over since the lockdown, to me, your sports channels are dead because there's no live sports, okay? There's no live sports, so you don't have that engagement. So I think that in post-COVID, it's going to be a situation of, just as CEAN have done, getting your health, safety, and environment protocols right, getting your protocols to a position where people feel safe to come out again and engage. And it's going to be a rebuilding process. It's going to take some time. Obviously, streaming platforms and online is going to be a key competitor and always has been. But I think in Nigeria, we will see more and more adoption of streaming and online platforms and online viewing, which is not a bad thing. But I think that once the world has worked out COVID and worked out the solution, I think cinemas will return to very fast growth, because I agree with Patrick. I don't see a future where people do not want to gather. Do you understand? People are always going to want to be together, touch each other. So what is happening right now is a reverse of normal human, natural experience and behavior, which is having to be driven by medical experts, and all industries have to adjust. It's a real pain in the whatever, especially for people that have been on an upward trajectory like the Nigerian cinema industry. But I'm a believer that post-COVID, they will have a long and successful future, because the size of the Nigerian market is enormous. And as he said, they're just beginning to scratch the surface. I don't know the numbers, Patrick can probably tell us, but if you look at the projections, I do know that some of our multiplexes in Nigeria are as busy as the busiest ones in Europe and as profitable. And I do know that if you do the exponential numbers and you go from your 150, 200 screens to 2,000 to 20,000, the numbers begin to change significantly in terms of Nigeria. So yeah, I think it's going to be
Okay.
it's going to be a tough period, but I think the future will be good.
So I am
Can I add to that?
Choma, if you don't mind, we're going to come back to you, and you can definitely add to this conversation on cinemas. I'm just conscious of time, and we have a lot to get through. Thank you so much. Ugoma, speaking of the art sector, so many major conferences and exhibitions were cancelled as early as January. You had Art Basel Hong Kong. They were one of the first to say, look, we're going to take this exhibition online and provide a free platform for artists to display and showcase their work. What are some of the scene, whether it's Africa or anywhere else, how they've been able to respond to COVID-19, and what do you think that means for especially the Nigerian art sector?
Hi, thanks, Joanna. And well, I mean, bringing it closer to home, I mean, Art Basel, of course, which typically doesn't have like a huge array of African art, but like if you think about fairs, 154 New York, just, you know, is actually on right now. It's on right now, it's live, and that had to be a quick conversion from a physical fair to a digital fair. And some of these, you know, sort of evolutions have been happening even before COVID. Of course, COVID has sent most of us online. Yes, the fairs are canceled. Museums, I mean, in the US and all over have, you know, had to be shut. Some of them will never reopen. So it's been quite a tragedy. Just like Patrick also said, I mean, and Obi also, I confirm that, you know, this aspect of the creative space, visual arts especially, has been traditionally based on very close community and contact, right? It's more experience than product. Everything from how art is made to how it's enjoyed, how it's even sold, has been really primarily soft. So how do you know, this has completely thrown everyone off, right? And even though, yes, there is a huge presence now digitally, you know, my gallery even, you know, which I completely had to be forced to do because I'm completely a purist, but, you know, we have to survive. But what is interesting, I think, is that you'll find that, yes, we've gone online, but commerce is not necessarily happening as buoyantly online, because I think that also across the board, there's a general sense of solidarity that we need to focus a bit more on maybe the social effects of COVID. Commerce will always be hanging in the sort of in the horizon, but there's been a very soft push to sell. And if you notice, most galleries across the world, and in Nigeria in particular, there's been a very low effort to sell, because I think it's just considered at the moment in our sector a bit insensitive. But what I also know is that the demand for, you know, art from the people who already adopted it is quite inelastic. And so we have still seen some successes. I mean, just again, recently, the Sotheby's African Contemporary and Modern Art auction also had to go from being a physical format to an online format. And while it wasn't a complete success in that they didn't reach the targets, there was still profit. Even just as, you know, an independent curator and dealer, I also am seeing, you know, one or two people holding the fort down because they are, again, as I said, already adopters, and their demand for art is quite inelastic. But I feel there's an opportunity which has been forced, which is to share art a bit more widely. While the commercial gains may not be achievable as deeply digitally as they would be physically, what we do know is that making it more available and making it more, I guess, making the viewing experience a bit more democratic is something I think that digital will help us achieve. And I think it's also something that will stay even after we return. I think in the case of Nigeria, culturally speaking, we are gatherers. We are feeling people. And I think that we have to look at COVID very specifically on a country by country basis. And I think even already, I mean, I'm having to push people away from coming to my gallery because I'm trying to stick with, you know, the law. But of course, you also have to, we're going to also have to, I guess, invest in making sure that protocols and health protocols can be I guess, internally created, gallery by gallery, museum by museum, because people are desperate to feel, people are desperate to touch, people are desperate to experience a physical piece of art. There's nothing that will ever replace a physical experience of seeing a Benamonwu on a wall. I'm sure many of you would agree. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's completely a no-no, but I think that the digital will continue to play a complementary and assisting role in the art space, in the visual art space. As Patrick also said, we were just beginning to scratch the surface. You know, the whole idea of visual art as something that people would even dream of spending money on 10 years ago was not the case. Even 5 years ago, we've made such huge leaps and bounds in the last 5 years. And I think that that growth will continue. I don't think that COVID-19 is a big enough monster that it will deflect the power that is growth in the Nigerian population and the Nigerian, even the effective population, which is the ones who have, you know, the money. For those who don't, the aspirational power is so strong that once they do get to a certain income level, they will want to be associated with certain things that, you know, their older aunties and brothers and co find attractive. So I think the future is bright. I do think that if we think about visual art in terms of commerce as well as social, because there is a social responsibility that art has. So maybe COVID, in my case, is a chance for some of those more educational and more social responsibilities of visual art, both from the artist side and the collector side, the patron side. Maybe this is something that has forced us to take some of those things more seriously, because my dream is to have a bigger population of people demanding art, such that whether a shock to the system like COVID or recession or Lassa, we find that we have more people in the pool of inelastic demanders of art. And that's something that, you know, we've been growing for a while. And I think that will continue to happen. And we'll now use the digital tools to help us make sure that those numbers grow. As the wealth increases, as we become more innovative, we also want to ensure that the portion of the population that considers beauty and art and experience and stories important grows as well. And I think that will trickle through, and it will support the cinemas. That population will be the same demanders of the cinema experience. That population will be the ones who are also even paying a bit more, even for streaming services, for, I guess, your not so sexy content. And so we need that, you know, generally a more curious and more effective, demanding population, which maybe COVID-19 will help us achieve, since we now will have to just do these digital reach outs. And of course, it also makes it easier. If I wanted to talk to a person in Zamfara, it's a bit easier for me now to do that than ever before. And so we'll continue to use digital as a complement to the work we've already started. And I'm quite positive. I don't think it's a Magadon yet. I think the future is really, really bright for the visual art space.
Thank you. You actually answered my second question really nicely. And just, you know, how do we, you know, how does this, you know, selling digital art online complement the industry? And you said that very nicely. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a closer look on the impact of COVID-19, especially when in regards to most of you here who organize and run some of the most biggest African fairs, exhibitions. We have Omoyemi, who's the creator and founder of Lagos Fashion Week. Obi, you have Social Media Week. Ogoma yourself, you have Lights Africa, the Lights Africa Festival, and Choma. Is Choma still there? I wanted to give a chance for Choma to start first, but I'm not sure if she's there. So I guess each of you can just respond to this question. Like, what are the ramifications of COVID-19? How has it impacted your events and your business? I mean, some of you had events. I mean, Social Media Week just missed it. It happened in February. But what are you looking for next year? What have you started doing? But we can definitely start with Omoyemi, especially the impact of Lagos Fashion Week. You guys were really quite quick to kind of turn your typical format online, and you ran a series of panel talks and showcases online. So could you just share more on the direct impact COVID-19 had on your events and how you were able to kind of turn it on its head to deliver woven thread a couple of weeks ago?
Okay, good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you for having me BusinessDay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yes. Okay, yes. So first things first, for us as a company at SHF, we don't really see Lagos Fashion Week as an event. It's very, very important. Lagos Fashion Week is one of the platforms that we have at Star House Files that we believe can play a significant role in the development of Nigeria and ultimately Africa's creative and cultural industries. So I guess in the last 10 years, we've worked tirelessly to try and ensure that we position it as beyond an event. You know, how is this platform, you know, operating in a way that can provide or, you know, create opportunities for either engagement, support, interaction. Gosh, where is this slide coming from? Support, interaction, engagement, you know, provide opportunities for access to markets, create opportunities for capacity building, skills development. How do we, you know, discover and nurture talent? You know, everything that you see us do during the 4-day period is sort of like a culmination of all the activities that we've done. All the engagements that we've done 1 year, all through the year. 1 second, please. In my face. Okay, yeah, sorry. So it's like a culmination of all that we've done all year round. So it is called an event and probably tagged Lagos Fashion Week, and it's supposed to be seen as a 4-day event. But beyond that, you know, it's a combination of different things or different engagements that, you know, have involved us working with either designers or practitioners in the creative industry in general. Sometimes it's a retailer, sometimes it's a designer, sometimes, you know, it's even people who work in apparel manufacturing companies, a series of things that we believe can help contribute significantly to the growth of our, 1, creative and cultural industry, 2, Nigeria, to the rapid growth of Nigeria's economic growth and ultimately Africa's. I mean, we just need to look around. Oh my goodness, sorry. We just need to look around us now and see that more than ever before, there's need to drive zero oil. I mean, Nigeria Export Promotion Council Executive Director, Mr. Segun Awolowo, is always consistent in his vision to drive the conversation beyond oil. And that's where I think, you know, our creative and cultural industries sit today. How do we, as a group of people, not only drive the conversation or drive the engagement, but we're ensuring that, you know, infrastructure is in place. We're ensuring that, you know, conversations can be had about how to empower creative people and to create significant opportunities for socioeconomic development. I see our role as, you know, beyond fashion, beyond the glitz and glamour of what you see on our runways from Lagos to South Africa, you know, and different parts of the world. I see like a value chain. I see all the people that people don't see working tirelessly behind the scenes to make commerce happen. And we know more than ever before that, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a complete halt to the global supply chain, you know, and we're feeling the effect here. We're a bit lucky in the sense that most African fashion brands are predominantly direct to consumer. So there's not that many in terms of distribution and logistics and supply. Most of the brands don't necessarily rely on such a huge scale of, you know, suppliers and distributors to make things work. So that is still, and I say this, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's not the case for everyone, but I'm saying that local business from your rough and tumble, you know, to maybe Tiffany Amber, the exposure will not necessarily be as great or impacted as maybe like a Gap or Uniqlo or one of those brands that rely on, you know, different countries to ensure that the distribution process is managed and working efficiently. So when we, as a platform, for example, thinking about our season 1 activation, Woven Threads, we'd always seen season 1 as an opportunity to engage with people, connect with them, and to teach, because we realized that leading to October, it's mostly about what happens on the runway, and there's usually little or no room to engage with the designers to be able to go behind the scenes, to actually see all the people that make up the ecosystem. So our season 1 activation was primarily focused on that. How do we let people know that, listen, guys, what we're looking for is right here within us. What we need to grow and scale up this industry is something that we have. It's our prized possession, it's our artisanship, it's our craftsmanship. It's all the people who work in silos across Nigeria and beyond in African communities who can help strengthen this industry. That is our story, you know. But in controlling this narrative and telling this story, it's not all the time that it's about that the focus should be on how it's presented. So our goal at the time was, you know what are we trying to achieve? We want to tell this beautiful story about woven thread. We want people to leave with this strong message that, listen, the future of African fashion has always been here. It's always been right here within our communities. So it's not going to be, we don't have this opportunity to host a physical event now, but can we still tell the story in a way that's powerful enough that can resonate? And resonate not just within here, but, you know, across communities, and to encourage people as well, because let's face it, this pandemic is something that, at least in my lifetime, something I've never experienced before. It's a humanitarian crisis of epic proportion. It's just suddenly, I mean, it's created so many news that, you know, everyone is currently trying to adjust to. But in the midst of that, are we able to tell a story that, you know, is able to sort of give us a glimmer of hope and to ensure that we are the light at the end of the day by telling stories of some of the people within our communities who are doing amazing work, who still, regardless of what's going on with the pandemic, still hire people. They're still trying to, you know, ensure that salaries are paid. Those are the sort of stories we want to tell. You know, so I don't really want to focus about, oh, Lagos Fashion Week as an event, is it happening? Is it not happening? We're lucky to have, you know, great partners. We don't see them as sponsors. Heineken is their partners, and we're, you know, it's great to have them believe in the vision and to be able to work with us that, listen, it's beyond an event. This is a platform that's trying to empower people, young creatives, either, you know, creating, you know, opportunities for discovering new talents or just to keep the conversation going. But I don't want to make that the focus of the conversation. What we want to talk about and what we're hoping to see and the conversation is, how can we, like the conversation Obi was talking about, how can we create collaborations that will strengthen our creative and cultural industries in its entirety, you know? So beyond fashion, how can we cross-pollinate to ensure that we benefit from what's happening in art? I've talked about this for years, music, fashion, you know, Nollywood and fashion, you know, how can we ensure that infrastructure that's in place is something that can create a ripple effect or create a trickle-down effect that can be felt by someone who's in Akwete weaving Akwete, or someone who's in Oshogbo weaving Ashoke, or someone who's in Abeokuta dyeing, you know, from the Kano dye pits to Abeokuta. Those are the conversations I want to have, so that we know that if I'm supplying or if there's a collaboration between a designer that probably shows at Lagos Fashion Week and an artist today, or music, you know, and we're ordering, like when we're talking about merchandise, ordering about 10,000 units, right? Now we're talking. So with 10,000 units of goods, we have to source fabrics. And there's a vertically integrated system in place where everything is sourced locally within Nigeria, right from the cotton, bring it from, I don't know, Funtua or somewhere in northern Nigeria, or even in Abeokuta, even, you know, even Western Nigeria, where people are already looking to create like textile manufacturing plants that's solely reliant on what we can find within us. Imagine how beautiful that would look, not just in terms of the product, but the fact that you can create something that's benefited different hands across the value chain, a process whereby everybody, from the vision to create, from the processes to the people, to the ultimate product that you see at the end of the day, is something we can all claim and, you know, claim ownership to, that, you know, this is a product, something we created, you know, in unity, in collaboration with community. But guess what? It's not just the designer who's taking the bar at the end of the day, because right down to the person who picked the cotton, you know, in some rural farm somewhere, to the next person who's ginning or spinning or weaving, everyone's benefited. Those are the stories we want to tell. That's the future that I hope to see. That's what, you know, the sort of conversations that I want us to have. Yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, it really sucks, excuse my French, that, you know, we're trying to produce masks and PPE and different things, and manufacturers across Nigeria are working together now, but fabric is an issue. It takes 3 days to come out. I don't want to focus on that because it drains me of energy, saps me of strength. But how do we look to the future to be able to create, to create that future that we hope to see, which is beyond the runway, which is what we've been saying since 2011, that our vision for fashion in Nigeria and beyond is beyond the runway. Yes, we use the runway to create and draw attention to this beautiful work that our designers have created in their ateliers or in their workshops or wherever. But beyond that, when the lights go out, what are we doing? Imagine if, for example, we couldn't supply or look for fabric. Look at how Aba, from hubs in Aba, I can list like 20, 30 different apparel manufacturers who are currently, keeping the cyclical chains of commerce going by paying their workers, sourcing fabrics. Commerce is still going on. And it's really sad and it breaks my heart that people are dying. However, the reality is this is the time that we must ensure that infrastructure is in place so that our creative and cultural industries can survive the next 10 years. So I don't think, I might be wrong, the global supply chain might probably never recover from this. Everyone is going to start doing like due diligence in terms of where do I produce, where do I source, and the more you look inward, the question should be, from here in Nigeria, can I source silk? Do we have silkworms in Nigeria that we can harvest silk from? Okay, we don't have silk. We're using our cotton. We found, like a pool of 30,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 cotton farmers. Are they empowered? From the sort of seed that is being planted, can it yield the sort of cotton that can? Those are the conversations that I want to have, which I believe will. And of course, another important conversation is how are some of the younger designers going to survive this? So it's okay for people who probably have workshops where you have 4 or 5 tailors and more, where you can churn out masks, you can churn out scrubs, you can churn out just different things to get by and pay your staff. But how do we protect the up and coming young creative designers? How do we and I always shy away from thinking that the solution is strictly something that has to be public sector driven. I've always been the kind of person that believes that the solution starts with us, as individuals, to search within ourselves, what are you doing? How can you make this better? So how can we empower those young creatives who are still creating? And let's face it, we have a youth population that's probably about 50+% between the age of 18 to 24, thereabouts. So these guys, where are they now, in the informal sector? What is happening to them? How are we going to ensure that they're occupied? How are we going to ensure that, they keep, earning an income? Because we must remember that when those people earn an income, it doesn't necessarily mean it's restricted to just them. It's everyone within their ecosystem and their sub-ecosystem. So so for me, it's really great. We're looking forward to hosting Lagos Fashion Week, but that's not going to stop us from doing all the work we do all year round, which is empowering, trying to explore how to empower creative people, capacity building, for the apparel manufacturing sector, creating opportunities for access to markets and, showcase and all the other things that we think in a way are still relevant to the conversation today, which is how do we create businesses, right? Fashion businesses that can, that's sustainable. And when I say sustainable, I'm using that in a loose sense, not necessarily because of the buzzword sustainability, but businesses that can outlive them and, that they can pass down from generation to generation. How do we create, a pool of thriving businesses? The conversations I want to have now is, what are the banks doing? So you're giving us a 90-day moratorium on people. Lots of these people have, probably, and I know banks are businesses, don't get me wrong, but how are they supporting beyond the 90-day moratorium? Obi just said this might be something that's ongoing for the next year or possibly more, so if you're offering a 90-day moratorium, is that enough to help support a small or young business? What's happening in terms of taxation? Are we still, paying all the, so I want to have conversations like that about solutions that will help us or sort of guide us through this space. And when I say solutions, not just something that's airy-fairy in the air, but something tangible that we can all hold on to and think about. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, well, thank you so much. There's so much there to distill, and I love the fact that you spoke a lot about value chains and how does this trickle down right down to the grassroots of things. It's not just how we're looking at events, but the importance of creating a story. And right now, stories are the most powerful tools we can use now to see us through this pandemic. I want to just go to Chioma a second, because obviously you founded Afrif, and a lot of the issues that Omoyemi has talked about in terms of the value chain around the sector, and it's also very much the same with film. You look at the ramifications of the fact that one single event has on the entire ecosystem, whether you're looking at ticketing, promotion, merchandising, talent, vendors. There are so many people along the value chain, and as Omoyemi pointed out, who are between 18 to 24, what's happening to them, and how have you seen that in your side of things and with your business?
Hello, everyone. So I run the Africa International Film Festival and also a streaming company called Envivo. Now, how does it affect us in this post-COVID period? With films, people make films a year ahead of the time. So you don't have a festival in November and people are making films in October that would go into the festival. So we found that, in fact, the reverse is for us. We just called for our submissions, and in 1 week, we had about 1,000 submissions. So there are lots of people who have missed out on bigger festivals that want to be showcased in November. And they're just hoping beyond hope that, you know, everything is back to normal at the time. But going from what we know and what we've heard, I don't know, I'm not saying, but I really don't see how we could go back to what we were in November. But that being said, there are movies. There are lots of movies, and for you to be submitting your movie now, you must have finished it or you are in post-production. So the case of having movies, it's really there. Now it's what would happen after this period. After this period, you have so many people right now that should be making movies that can't be making movies because it's a very contact-driven industry. So there's a huge gap. There will be a huge gap in movies. There's a huge problem right now because a lot of them are not working. For the film festival, we do so much beyond just showcasing the movies. We've always had a talent industry where we train so many kids every year. And how is that going to happen? Luckily for us, for Africa International Film Festival, we started thinking ahead. I wake up sometimes and I think I actually prepared myself unconsciously for COVID-19 because we created an IT company and we wanted to find a way to reach so many more people and train so many more people because Nigeria has a huge field of creative kids that don't know how to get to the Lagos, to the big cities to be trained. So we had started preparing online courses, trying to reach out to other universities and other high institutions for their course material. And we always wondered, how are we going to train these people online? At the time, it seemed like a dream, like a joke. But now what we find is that, so come November, if the festival doesn't happen the way it normally does, can we still train the 200 students we train every year? Well, we started already. This May, we started training young kids in animation. We also researched into what the millennials want. What are they looking at? What are they devouring? And we found out that a lot of people would rather do animation, Japanese anime, and game. While we're waiting for the regular production to go back into place, you can train to be an animator, a creator online. And so it takes about 9 months to get to the stage where you now have a real director come from Japan or wherever, not from here because we don't have it, and then take you into creation. So for the COVID period, we've had so many students submit their resumes. First of all, there are basic things you have to be an architect or you studied engineering. The basic things you've had to have studied to want to be an animator or you like change the course of what you were doing before. And that again is another thing. We have to change the way we think. We have to innovate. We have to see things very different. So we're working as a company. We're working on that. We're working to see, okay, you act, and right now you don't have work. Maybe, just maybe, you could be good with voiceovers, because in animation you would need a lot of voiceovers. Because you're a star already, it also works. So you have those that are stars, you have those that are not stars. So we're thinking in a large, we're thinking of the bigger picture, because COVID-19 is real. It might seem like 2 months, but you don't know if it's going to be 2 years. And one thing we all have to remember is that there's a growing culture and it's changing. The culture as we know it to be is being accelerated by COVID. So we all talk about the digital age. We didn't know it would go into it real quick in Africa. But 2 weeks ago, we had to onboard, my company onboarded all of LASU, the Lagos State University students, onto the platform, and they're in school right now. So you grow that culture and you go back to status quo, it's not happening. So whether you like it or not, streaming is here to stay. It would not take away from the cinemas, but it will eat into the market. There'll be people that normally would not like to go out. That there are people like, I know amongst us, some people are germaphobes. So, just having the fact that I could be home and watch my movie and it's a controlled situation, it's going to create more germaphobes than anything else. So for the festival, there's a lot going to suffer. I mean, transportation, all the stars would normally, all the like real talent, not necessarily stars, the big directors, the big, the companies, the streaming companies, the big cinema guys that will come to look at films to buy, I don't see them coming. If you have a vaccine, then it makes sense. I don't see a vaccine coming before November. Airspace, they're talking about opening it in June. It's tough. So you have transportation, you have hospitality. We don't know yet how the hotels are going to open. What are the protocols to, you see, there's a change, and we must accept that there is a change. How people go into hotels to stay has changed. People are going to be more conscious of their health. People are going to be more conscious about how they eat, how they live, their well-being. All these go to affect how the festival is going to be run. So you have the talent classes, you have even the cinemas. Normally, we have to use cinemas. Some of the movies get to be streamed more than once because it's so popular. You have people sitting on the floor in some screening rooms. How is that going to happen? People don't want to sit close to anybody else, So there's a big problem for COVID period. And then how do we get out of it post-COVID? So we're thinking ahead and we're saying, fine, in terms of sponsorship, forget it. The companies don't even know how they're going to survive. Everybody's adjusting and readjusting. By now, we should have our sponsors in place. Whether you've been a sponsor partner forever, they're rethinking how things are going to be. They're looking at their balance sheets. They're looking at how business is going to be run. Now, Nigeria got a double whammy. We're an oil-producing state or country, and we're so affected by it. So you have the oil, you have COVID. So for us, we have to look in and really realize it's going to be tough. So how do you prepare yourself, your outfit for these tough times? How do you still reach your audience? How do you still manage all the talent? Every year we train 200 kids. How is that going to happen? I think we should be thinking beyond what is happening now. Now with Nigeria, I'm very honored to be part of a committee that was just put together 2 days ago by the federal government, how to look into the industry and see how we can how we can help the sector. What are our problems? What needs buffering? You know, all these things are going to be conversations we have in place now to help people post-COVID. The Bank of Industry, who I borrowed money from, have been extremely generous to us because while other people are giving 3 months palliative, they gave a 12-month. So there's a 12-month period where you don't have to pay back at the time. And then again, the interest rate, thanks to the CBN, they lowered it down to 5%. So, you know, I'm very, very happy. I'm very grateful as to what is happening. It's a growing concern. And the country is fast realizing that two things are going to strive. It's going to be the creative sector and it's going to be the IT sector. Our oil is going, if not gone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Choma, thank you so much. If I can just quickly jump in, because you've raised a lot of points. Thank you very much for your contributions. I mean, the fact that you were able to pivot so quickly during COVID-19 is amazing. And the impact that you're able to make with going online has also been amazing. And of course, you touched on the idea of, just like Omoyemi said, and just how Mr. Patrick said, you have to think about our local infrastructure because we can't rely on oil. So now, how do we now build the capacity of the creative industries? How do we build infrastructure? And these are all things that I guess BusinessDay and MTN will be definitely taken away from them as key points. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to jump to Obiasika, and hopefully we can still circle back on some of the points that Ugama would like to share on her festival. But I mean, Obi, when we talk about music now, there's obviously a lot happening. There's, just like Mr. Patrick mentioned, there's a lot competing for attention online. And we've seen like Spotify and Apple, there's been a decline in how many people are streaming on these services. And obviously there's a big reliance on Apple and Spotify and co when it comes to African artists on the continent, because it depends on these platforms for distribution of their music, especially if you're not necessarily part of other types of structures that can help push your music out there. How do you see the impact of African music? We've seen a lot of people going online, doing live performances. Facebook just released a new feature where people can actually pay to stream and to watch their favorite artists or their favorite influencers. But how does this really affect locally, local artists and local musicians and just the sector in general from your perspective? And then I'll also ask, like, how sustainable is this long term, especially considering the fact that many people are still yet to go on digital? I think sometimes we do forget that, you know, this whole idea of digital adoption is very much a very small segment of the entire market and the entire population. So I would like your thoughts on that, if you could quickly share.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you, Obi.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I just want to pretty much tag in right behind the ladies. You know, this is one of the good things about following ladies is you can sound intelligent after you speak after them. I think that there's a point that Miami made, which is about collaboration. And I think that's actually the key to this whole conversation. In terms of the music industry, I think that we all know the music is one of the hardest hit industries in the world. Yeah. Music and live sports are badly hit, especially because live music is a huge percentage of the revenue opportunity for any musician. And if you bring it back home to Nigeria, it's absolutely like the main thing for all our artists is performing at events, weddings, you know, AGMs, conferences, parties, festivals, and concerts. And all of those things are frankly going to be questionable throughout the COVID-19 period. And that's why you're seeing all these people trying to do different things, whether you're an older generation and you were checking out Babyface and Teddy Riley on IG Live when they crashed it, or when you're looking at what D Nice was doing as well. So what you're seeing though is that Black people, as always, are the first people to change culture. Yeah, and it's coming from and we also in Africa are very fast, and these are our first cousins, and we're doing the same thing. The question is this, and I think the issue is this: it's going to be a while before we get back, maybe summer next year, before we get back to like live festivals, big crowds with public crowds. Who knows? I'm with Shoma. I'm praying that medical science and the global effort will bring us a solution by the end of this year into the first quarter next year. But then you still have to think about how long it takes to produce those vaccines and get everybody on board, and then get people as human beings ourselves get comfortable to being back exposed to everybody else. So maybe it's a year and a half, 2 years. So, but the thing is this, but Pepper, just to go back to your point, even if Spotify and the rest of them decline in their global streams, I'm not really that bothered at this point in time, because Spotify and Apple Music are very, very small presence in Africa, okay? The business opportunity in Africa is for an African-owned platforms that can scale for music, for the streaming, for the rest, just like Choma's in Vivo. So what you have is that if you look at Spotify, Tidal, you know, Apple Music, their total subs in Africa are probably less than 1 million. These are all of them combined, and I'm talking 54 African countries. But if you look at YouTube streams, you will know that the Africans, led by the Nigerian Afrobeats artists, are doing billions of streams on YouTube every year in Africa. Yeah. On Spotify and on Apple Music, we are also doing billions of streams globally, which just shows the global footprint for our music. The real opportunity is for the hard capital, the hard power of Nigeria, which is the backing, the money, to back the innovation sector, the technology guys, to create that platform or those platforms. Because right now, let me tell you, there are at least 25 tickets on social media. It's not the 200 million of the country, but 35 million is a lot more than a lot of countries' population. So our digital economy is already here. It's not even a potential future. And if we look at it like that, I would say for me, for the music industry, and I was saying this earlier this week, and same thing with Patrick was saying, the same thing exists for the movie industry. The music industry has built big brands already, I think. We've built big brands. We have brands that can sell merchandise and products. I believe there are a lot of Nigerian brands that can sell merchandise and products. I think the conversation with Abba is absolutely critical as a partnership. This thing that, as Omoyemi spoke about, I've spoken about it earlier, because you need to get to scale. But then the most important thing is the integrity of the pipe, of the distribution pipe. Because, you know, the Banj or Wizkid, Rema or Don Jazzy, whoever it is, everybody needs to know that if you sold 100 of my t-shirts, that's what you really sold, right? So integrity and collaboration are going to be the things that actually bring us through this crisis. Because the problems that have been here all the time. I would say that for everybody in the Nigerian creative industries, and if you add to creative industries, software developers, technology, innovation people, even look at hair and makeup and beauty, right? Nobody is doing maybe 5% of what they could really do in this country, because the lack of supply chain and retail, you know, in Nigeria, which has nothing to do with your sector, our sector. So when people say, oh, the creative industries have no structure, I'm like, no, Nigeria has no structure, right? Because if I was in America or in the UK and I'm a creative and I have the talent, I don't have to look for this. I don't have to invent my own distribution and my own marketing and my own retail. There are built industries that do all of those things. I just bring my talent. So the difference is this: you look at a Rihanna and what she's been able to do with her brand, and you look at Wizkid and what he's not able to do with his brand here. It's nothing to do with Wizkid not being intelligent. It's to do with our system not enabling him to earn. So we have to unlock ourselves. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's that maybe the big money needs to understand that the big money is Nigerians. It's like Omayemi was saying, we are bigger. Our human capacity and potential is 10,000 times bigger than any mineral resources in this country. That's just my belief. And if you take that from fashion, from food, from music, from Nollywood, you will get the answer. Now, just talking about the pivot, I mean, Chioma and all the ladies here, they do incredible things with these shows. And that's pretty much the same idea of Social Media Week Lagos, which is really about bringing together all the innovators and all the creators to have a platform to express themselves. You know, it's never been a profit-making thing. And, you know, my partner, who really is the executive director, last week we pivoted. We did an event called Next Africa online, over 1,000 speakers. And I think the thing is this, so Chioma will be able to do her festival with breakout rooms and everything, with platforms like Hopin. But what we're all talking about is it may take another 2 years to get back to the physical experience. And then some conferences and some events will move permanently online. You know, there are going to be some things where you're going to say to yourself, I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to travel for that. I'll attend from here. Right? So the industry is going to change in that way. You might find that the Nigerian Bar Association, their annual general meeting is online. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm sure it will be this year, and all these kind of things. So I think we have to use technology, have to be clever. We've got to work together, and you've got to really look at the domestic opportunity. If there was ever a time to look at what made in Nigeria actually means, which I think it means yeah, sorry, I was out for a second. So I'll just say that I think made in Nigeria means investing in Nigerian talents, content, and skills, and bringing that to the fore. You know, there was a time when we didn't used to wear Nigerian fashion. There was a time we didn't used to listen to Nigerian music. There was a time when we didn't used to believe anything decent could come from Nigeria. As a kid, I remember made in Japan was a negative word, made in Taiwan, Taichu, made in China. So why can't made in Aba, made in Newi, made in Lagos, made in Nigeria become gold standard brands that will drive this region, this country, and then the world? Because the truth of the matter is our soft power will take in Africa. Maybe our hard power can partner with us now monetize in Nigeria, and the rest should be the primary conversation. I'm happy that Chioma is on that government committee because she knows this, and a lot of the other people there know it as well. I hope I've answered your question to some extent.
Yes, you have. Again, just being very cautious of time. There's so much to discuss and to really think about. I have a question from a panelist, and then I want to just quickly get some input from Ogoma, especially, and there's a lot of big concepts and high-level thoughts around what one can do post-COVID. So what will be the next steps in terms of trying to get this infrastructure going, or trying to get people back into work and engaging all the various stakeholders relating to your particular sector? So I have a question from Sunny. Dear panelists, can we talk on how publishing companies would run differently, especially digitally? Does anybody want to take that particular question? Did you hear the question?
Who's answering the question?
I think,
What's the
yes,
question?
on publishing, right?
Yes.
I think quite a few publishing houses, I mean, have in the last few years created opportunities for, I mean, if we look at Amazon, for example, you can buy the books, or you can buy and also have the ebook version as well. I think that, you know, for now, I don't really see it really affecting things, but like most businesses, you're going to have to sort of provide both opportunities. We're currently in a place where we're trying to create an ebook version of something that we wanted to print and publish live. But probably because I come from a fashion background, and quite a few publications, Joanna, you know this, there'll be the paperback, of course, and of course there would always be like something you can flip on your phone. I suspect that publishing, if we're talking about books in general, magazines and things like that, we'll probably have to provide both opportunities. I am a print girl. I've always been a print girl, probably because I worked for a magazine for a while. So I'm never going to be that girl that's strictly going to, read ebooks or e-versions of everything. Maybe it's the smell of print, So I still believe in a world where both will exist side by side, but maybe for now, there might be more investment in trying to create e-versions of books and yeah, books, magazines, and all the like. If I'm thinking about publishing from that angle.
Thank you, Omoyemi, and I hope that answers your question, Sunny. If anyone else has any questions, please use the Q&A button to ask a question, because it'll be very difficult to get everyone's questions through the chat. So Ugoma, just to kind of quickly get your inputs, and then we'll try and see how we can wrap up the conversation, because we are a little bit over time. So for you, with your film festival, and obviously with Choma working with film producers, what would you say is the next step that festival producers can really engage in to start helping people, especially when we start looking at the lockdowns easing up? How do we get from where we are now back into, getting people into work or creating content creation and all of this stuff?
I don't really think that trying to get back to how we were is really the mission here, And as I said, also to agree with sort of what Omoyemi said earlier about things not looking at things as events, because if you think about her platform, Choma's platform, my platform, yes, they kind of culminate in these week-long events, but the background to a lot of those efforts are things that have happened through the year. What are we interested in? We're interested in, elevating our stories. We're interested in elevating and empowering people who work in those industries. Just like Choma, again, it's almost like we had some kind of premonition, but I don't think it's because we're witches. I think it's just that everyone is trying to deepen the reach. And so if we've all been concerned about how maybe the things we're doing have only ever been enjoyed by a small group of people, if you were a conscious creator and you truly mean to develop this country, you would have been thinking about how we can deepen this reach. In the case of Lights Camera Africa as well, we're kind of in a limbo. This is our 10th year. So there were so many things that we planned and so many things that I think are still on paper. And to be very honest, you will hear about what we will do. But one thing I can tell you for sure is that we've already explored collaborations. We've always done, but we are already in partnership with a company, a tech company, because how do you ask people to come back? I'm not yet prepared to ask people to come back. Our festival is earlier than AfroIF's, about a month before. We probably will have to be a bit more innovative around what the physical experience would be if it exists, if we're legally allowed to do it or not. But more importantly, one of the things that I hope and I believe that COVID-19 would have helped us achieve as a festival is force this conversation about distribution of the kinds of films that we show after the festival. Because in the case of, I'm sure Choma had some input, but in the case of Lights Camera Africa, because of the sort of very focused niche of the kinds of films, they disappear after the festival. And that has never been something that has sat very well with me, because I want to ensure that art can be propagated for as long as possible. So those conversations around ensuring that the reach and the lingering effect of those works of art is felt for long after the film festival is something that technology was already in conversation with about helping us achieve. And that will, I think, come to bear even more forced now by COVID-19. As I said earlier, I think that there are a lot of things that were already in the works. COVID-19 may have accelerated, but if we're being really honest, right, I think one of the things we would all agree on is that there's so many things that all of us in our individual fields have felt were necessary inputs, necessary changes to infrastructure, the issue of trust, building trust, the issue of collaborations, were already conversations that we're all having. Maybe COVID-19 has had to become the accelerator for us to do these things that we know we needed to have done anyway. And maybe now, because there's a bit less choice, we will be forced to collaborate. We'll be forced to try and focus more on, building trust amongst ourselves in terms of the pipeline of, flow. And of course, the most important thing I really would love to, celebrate that we've talked about is just this notion that there's some idea of the other. The only thing is us. It's Nigeria for Nigeria. Anything that we want to achieve is our responsibility. We have the population, we have the opportunity to create an effect demanding population for all the things we need. And I think together we could really do that. There's no other, especially in the case of the visual art space. I, again, have been a proponent of that forever. There's no art market in the world that depended on another block to empower them. The Americans bought American art. The Chinese went from a non-collecting, non-art buying group of people overnight, practically, to a group of people that were not just buyers, but custodians of art. And they did that because they agreed as a bloc that this is what we want, inwards, inwards. So I hope that this is something that really embarrasses us to the point that we know that we need to honestly not have any more of these conversations around this other, because it doesn't exist. And it shouldn't exist, because if it does, we then will be, again, will be exposed. The next shock that comes will be exposed. And I think if there's anything that we haven't really learned is that we keep repeating, systems that don't really work for us. They've never really worked for us. And at the bottom of that really is a cultural conversation, a real cultural conversation that really still comes down to identity, which art really, again, helps to unpack. That sense of looking down on ourselves before we even had a choice. Even the idea of trust, we almost choose to not trust first before we trust after. Whereas maybe our culture says, try the trust first, because in every scenario where I've trusted first, I've never been disappointed. And it's with Nigerian partners. Even the partnership we're exploring now, it's with Nigerian partners. So I think that's all I wanted to do. Afrif and Lights Camera will finally do something together after all these years.
I'm up for it.
Can we get hearing commission, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Pepper.
Thank you very much, Ugoma, for your contributions there. I think that each and every one of the guest panelists all have a very strong vision for what they want to see Nigeria to be for the past 10 years, 15 years. It's something that you have all individually tried to propel for your individual platforms. And like you said, COVID-19 has presented an opportunity for us to really accelerate all of these different ideas of building infrastructure, collaborating, looking within. But let's be very practical now, because it's something that everyone's been talking about for the past 10, 20 years. And, we always gather in these types of forums and we try to really, but practically speaking, what would be the next steps? What needs to happen right now to get all of these ideas, these visions, and these amazing aspirations to get this engine rolling? I would like to ask Mr. Patrick first, especially when you're looking at what kind of policy reforms, if you could speak to your work and the kind of things that you feel can really let's push the needle now, and let's really get to work on what we need to do and to create a new Nigeria or a new way of being. So if Mr. Patrick could start first, and then everybody else can contribute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pepper. One of the most important things that has happened in the last 1 week is the government body panel that's been set up, of which Chioma is a part of. And we're very pleased that has actually happened, because it gives us an opportunity.
Can we get the name of the panel for anyone who doesn't know the name of this panel or this committee?
Chioma, do you
I don't know if it has a name. I don't think so.
I think it's a federal government committee to look at the creative industries and the post-COVID, post-COVID-19, post-COVID-19. And Chioma and Patrick are both solid members of the committee.
Yes, Chioma's on the committee, and it's an avenue for us to talk to government about the problems we're facing and the solutions that we want to come out of it. Hopefully there'll be solutions that we can push long-term and help to develop the industry. And I'm sure Chioma will be having discussions with all the stakeholders within the industry and within her own part of it as to how we can actually build a framework that will be sustained over a period of time. Because as you said, this is something that we did not expect, but it's given us an opportunity. And that opportunity, if we use it right, we'll be able to build a foundation that can project the creative industry to where we really want it to be able to also ensure that the expectations that we have, we can now finally go ahead and realize it. So I'm very confident and pleased that Chioma is on that panel. The panel's been set up, and they have, I think, 30 or 40 days to come up with their recommendations. So
I'm telling you, the clock is ticking already. It's not even up to 30 days anymore.
Thank goodness. So that's one. And secondly, when we're looking at the cinema business, Nollywood is going to play a tremendous role in the growth of the cinema business in Nigeria. We already felt that even before 2020 started, and before COVID-19, it was one of the major areas we were talking about. Unfortunately, COVID came, no problem, but we still believe that Nollywood is the bedrock of the cinema business in Nigeria. Now, why do I say that? I look at Omoyemi, for example. She's into fashion. Now, Nollywood is developing more and more blockbusters. They will need to showcase Nigerian fashion, and they will need to employ these young people that Omoyemi is talking about. How will they be gainfully employed? Nollywood is an avenue. So she is already working in an area that Nollywood needs to improve and can improve upon, and needs to use to be able to showcase Nigerian fashion. Now, take music. Every single Nollywood movie is dependent on Nigerian soundtracks. Okay, but how do we crystallize that into better business models? And how do we use popular Nigerian music to actually sell our movies? That's also an area that is going to become far more important. Then we talk of merchandising. Merchandising, before we came on air, we discussed this issue of merchandising. Obi is big on trying to push ABBA merchandising out there. For us, we see ourselves in the cinema business as a shop window. We put the movies on, our customers come in, they see those movies, we put the paraphernalia all around our cinema, say, look, you love this? Okay, here's what it will look like. Go to the shop and buy it. Obi will work with the ABBA people to ensure that the quality is good. He will also work with them to ensure that we do not have situations whereby they're pirated, because you don't just pirate Nollywood movies, you can end up trying to pirate the merchandise that goes with it. So we'll try to block those roadblocks, but push that market. So it's very important to us. And when I look at what Ugoma said with regards to art, my children actually prefer to have a look at my albums than they prefer to look online. They're more interested in the albums. They want to see the photographs. They want to see even though I have plenty of photographs online, they would rather sit down with the albums and talk among themselves, because that physical contact that looking at an album brings, you can't take it away from, especially the kids who are growing up. So it's an area that I think that we're also going to be able to develop, that area of wanting to be part of something. So for us in the cinema business, we're looking at that. How do you enjoy a movie? You enjoy a movie when you go to the cinema. What do you remember about the movie when you come out? You take, for example, The Wedding Party. Everybody enjoys the scene where Shola Sobowale was doing her dance. It's ingrained in everyone's mind. But how did that happen? It happened because a lot of people saw it on the big screen. It's not necessarily the same on a small screen. It does have an effect, but you get more of an effect on it when you see it on the big screen. And so for us, we're trying to sell the experience. And we know that if we're able to bring that experience back to the customers, we will have a situation whereby the whole of the industry that also depends on us as the final end user supports the rest of the industry to develop. So for us, we're confident that if we continue what we're doing, we believe that the other areas that depend on us will be able to get their own act up and running, to the extent whereby government will say, look, yes, this creative industry is important, but we're beginning to see the results. So for post-COVID-19, it's important for us to ensure that the platforms are there. We continue with the push to be more Nigerian in our outlook, and as much as possible, send that message out, because one of the biggest ways in which you can tell the Nigerian story, to me, is on screen, whether it be small or big. And we need to use that platform.
So
Chioma is working very hard to ensure that. Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
So that's
fine.
basically it from my viewpoint.
Can I apologize for something, please? I noticed that somebody wrote that I was chewing and was distracting. I had no clue that the viewers could see everybody. I thought it was when you're talking they see you. So I was busy having some snacks. I'm really sorry.
I'm sure it's fine. I mean, so far as we don't see anybody wearing boxer shorts with their blazers, I think that's fine. Chewing's fine. Thank you, Choma. So so two things that Mr. Patrick talked about. One was being able to directly engage with government, and we've seen certain initiatives like the committee that's been set up. Secondly, in his view, is having Nollywood drive a lot of the value chain, whether it's through using young musicians on soundtracks or whether working with the fashion industry for costume and wardrobe. There's a lot of synergies that can happen that should be pushed. So Obi, if you can also just give two things on two steps different to what another panelists have said. And I'll also ask the same for Omayemi and Ugoma before we wrap up.
Okay. Is that for me or Chioma or who? I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, so you go first.
Oh, it's for me. Okay. I'm just trying to remember something that hasn't been said. But I think collaboration is the key word. I think collaboration and connected thinking, right? Connected thinking is absolutely critical. We have the capacity to do everything ourselves. That's the truth. We don't even have to reinvent stuff a lot of times. We can literally take the thing and just bring it here and make it our own. And I think that maybe the one thing we didn't talk about is the sort of individual creator, you know, the Nollywood director, the actor, the actress, the singer, you know, those people, the talents, the comedians. And the truth of the matter is most of the technology platforms already exist. The social media is there. They just have to be clever in terms of how they navigate their way on these platforms to monetize, because it depends on how. The real issue about anybody right now is about engagement. How interactive are you? Are people, you could have 10 million followers, but if only 5 people are reacting when you post, then they're not really engaging you. And that is a skill set. So I would say the most important things are collaboration and having professional advice. If you're a talent, make sure you have a professional or business advice person with you to help you with your strategy through this period. If you're a business, it's not a bad thing to have somebody who's a financial advisor as well, who can be with you. Because the Nigerian opportunity has always been clear, I think, for everybody. I think there has been, what COVID also has shown us is the lack of our capacity. The countries that have capacity they didn't have any panic. I don't see any panic in South Africa. Do you understand? And capacity is a collective issue. You know, it's easy to just blame government, but the reality is all of us have been guilty of, you know, watching a non-existent healthcare system. We all know the situation of our healthcare. We know the situation of our educational system. And those two systems, if you add them and social welfare, those are the bedrocks for the entire community and society. So whilst it's great and we're focusing on creative industries today, there's a lot the creative industries cannot do without the wider society. So that wider society of big capital, big logistics, policy, you know, from the big companies and government are critical. So anything like this that brings those people closer together is beautiful. And I also think that you will find that all the talents are already pivoted, okay? Nigerians are very creative people. They've pivoted already. The question is, we don't know how sustainable it's going to be.
Yeah.
How what the revenue is going to be. But in terms of presence, in terms of...
I'm so sorry, I have to...
No, yeah, cut me off, please. Cut me off.
Short there. I think you raised really cool points on collaboration and thinking. I'm so sorry. just very quickly from Omoyemi and Ugoma, just very quick steps that we can take next to solve some of these challenges as we in relation to COVID-19. Otherwise, Business Day will never ever call me back to moderate a panel again. So very quick.
Ugoma, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go. Well, so we don't repeat too much. Obi has said a lot about the collaborations. We've talked about that. For me, I think I was fortunate to be in another webinar last week, and I think I think I'll bring it down to maybe some of the more emotional sides, which I always try to bring to things, because again, in that we find a lot of the solutions, right? So even the idea of panic, right? I think that it's cool right now to panic. And maybe on a very simple level, maybe there's no need to panic. I think that a lot of the things that we're ascribing, as I said, to COVID may not be COVID issues. They were already existential, dysfunctional issues that we had as Nigerians. And I think we should keep it at that, so that COVID doesn't take us away from the things that we're already doing wrong or we're not doing enough of. So I really would like not to ascribe a lot of this dysfunction that we need to now collaboratively address to COVID. They were there before. And that's because we have not been responsible. We've not been responsible as a collective. And I would say even the private sector. The government is clearly, we reserve our comments for the government, but I'm also very interested in self-determination, what we can do as private individuals to essentially create the kind of systems we want. What do we want to create? We, as we've gathered here in this forum, and extending that, because the population is there, the funds are there, and the connecting of the funds and the population is now where we need to get. And I think that will happen again, just from really the collaborations and understanding our responsibility as the consumers. The consumer needs to become a more responsible type of consumer, which means you need to value art, film, books, whatever, pay for that. If you do not have the means, okay, then the economy that is growing anyway will hopefully trickle down so that we all become, I guess, effective consumers. But I think that there's a lot that we've relegated to things that have nothing to do, because this is a market. And in the market, the supply exists and demand exists. And it's as simple as that. We need to become a more responsible, more sustainable, effective, demanding sector. And that's a private initiative. And I think we need to look inwards at that. And I think in the meantime, while we also don't really know, for those of us who know for sure, yes, go like speed ahead at your goals. But I think there's also something I need to say to people who don't know. Nobody knows. We're all pontificating and we're making assumptions. And that's fine because we're thinkers. But I think it's also important to be able to not do anything. Where you're not sure, as a very important mentor of mine told me last week, do not rush and go and adopt somebody else's response to a crisis, right? Exactly. It's very important to stay still when you're not sure. Again, collaborate by asking, reaching out, building your knowledge. But where you're absolutely not sure, please, I think it's important to just accept this time as a time to stay still, maybe a time to ponder, learn, and find out before you make any like drastic changes in your business or your lifestyle to even address a problem that is actually really not yours because you've not explored it properly. Thank you. And, again, I look forward to us taking this conversation further, us as a group in this particular forum. And thank you again, Business Day, for asking me to be part of this. Thank you.
So, sorry, Omoyemi, I have to be very strict. If you can make it as brief as possible. So
yeah. It's for us, probably because we work in a sector where we've predominantly always relied on other people for survival. So we've this season we've just made it more crucial, made it more important for people to reach out. So I'm not going to talk about collaboration, but what opportunities exist for co-creation. And not just, fashion within fashion or within apparel and manufacturing sector, but the wider industry. So how can we co-create with tech people and make the sort of impact that we want to see or hope to see? But moving on quickly, right? We don't believe that we have all the answers or the solution, but it's important more than ever before that we take each day as it comes. We've had a few sessions where we told people that, listen, the most important thing now is to ensure that your business has a cash flow, or to ensure that you hold on to the cash that you have. Because the immediate thing is, how do you survive this season or survive this phase? And beyond survival, right? If you can, I would tell people, because I'm a dreamer, I'm a daydreamer, I dream a lot. Beyond survival, if you can dream, please go ahead and dream. And if you have opportunity to be able to implement some of the things that's been laid on your heart to do this season, please go ahead and do it. But please don't be isolated. Reach out to as many people as you can. Reach out to people beyond your sector, beyond your industry, to be able to lean on, to be able to, the key word this season is community. We all have to come together. This pandemic has shown us that more than ever before, more than ever before, over and over again. But this pandemic has shown all of us that we're all human, and that's the thread, the single thread that's linking us together. And with our humanity comes the need for us to realize that for us to be able to function as everyday human beings, we have to rely on our community for pretty much everything. So to strengthen ourselves, strengthen our businesses, and to dream of the future, and to actually activate the future that we hope to see. So thank you so much for having me. This has been quite interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much to you all. You've been amazing. You've given really amazing responses to all the questions. There's a lot to unpack. So thank you so much for being amazing panelists. And thank you to BusinessDay for the opportunity to have this discussion again. And I'm going to hand you back to BusinessDay to close the session officially. Thank you. And thank you to all the attendees.
Thank you very much. I think you've said everything. There's just one point I'd like to make before I wrap up. When in BusinessDay, we canvass and advocate engagement with government, we do not mean that government should come and be the artist, that government come and be the director, that government come and be the company to promote or to market the movies. Why we do that is because we know that often policy always precedes investment. The private sector will not, turn up to the party unless, of course, government has taken itself out of the way or has created the path. Let me give you an example. We're struggling with testing for coronavirus in Nigeria. In South Africa, the last time I checked, they had done 245,000 tests. In Nigeria, I think we've done between 10 and 20,000 tests. But where is the difference? In South Africa, the private sector has done 123,000 tests. That is half, or just slightly more than half of the number of tests for coronavirus that South Africa has done. In Nigeria, all the tests that we have done has been done by the government, simply because the government has been unwilling to engage the private sector. So let me ask you, will there be a Nigerian company today making investment in testing capacity against the next virus? The answer is no. That's why, Chioma, when you meet with government, we don't want them to replace the private sector, but we want them through policy to open up the space so that stars like you can shine. As it is today, government determines who shines and who doesn't. And that, for me, is a great disservice to entrepreneurship in Nigeria. But anyway, I am not a member of the panel. Let me start by thanking you all so very much. Joanna, I can tell you there's absolutely no question of BusinessDay not coming back to you. You have been a star, thank you. Chioma, thank you very much. And now you have on your shoulders the burden of virtually everybody on the panel and those who were or are in the audience as well as you engage with government. Ugoma, thank you so much for your contribution and for kindly letting us see the beautiful art pieces behind you. Omoyemi, thank you very much. I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing. And of course, Patrick and Obi, you know how I feel already. MTN, thank you for making this happen. And to our audience, I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
Bye,
as well.
everyone. Have
Thank
a
you.
lovely weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Stay
Bye.
safe.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Okay.